There are so many words I would use to describe Archbishop Flynn. First of all, I would say he is a holy man.
Well, I think every local church should be thankful to its pastors for having been a pastor, for having been a good spiritual leader. And certainly Archbishop Flynn has provided that.
He has a passion for the gospel, a passion for sharing that passion with other people. But it's in very simple, down-to-earth ways that he's able to communicate with people.
He's a real man of peace and just a great person.
He's just such a special person, and he is so holy. He's a very spiritual man. He's a very good man. You've got to be a better person for being with him.
He is the holiest man I've ever met on this earth.
I've just kind of taken on this prayer that you hear him say so often for us frequently before a board meeting or a committee meeting that we're having, where he would just kind of call us all to be still and present and just say this prayer, "Come, Lord Jesus." And he would repeat that several times, and you can just sense the kind of the peace or quiet that comes over a group of people.
I like to say that Archbishop Harry Flynn sees the world the way God does, which means one person at a time. To God, each individual person is infinitely beloved and valuable, and that's the way Archbishop Flynn sees. That's his view on the world.
We think of Archbishop Flynn as the exalted chief shepherd of our archdiocese for so many years and all that he's done on the big picture. But it's also his remarkable qualities as an individual Christian, as one who walks the walk as well as talks the talk. Archbishop Flynn is a man of prayer, a man of deep prayer, and everything he does proceeds from that encounter with God.
Well, I think the first time I met Archbishop Flynn was back in the early 70s. He had been, at that time, Father Flynn, the rector of Mount St. Mary's in Emmitsburg, Pennsylvania. The most amazing thing about the man at that point for me was I had never met him, but I had heard so much about him. He was already a legend in the seminary because all of our men who came from there, they just told Father Flynn stories. He personified, I think, for them and for me too, what it means to be a good, holy priest. All the challenges that a shepherd and an archbishop would have in building up the body of Christ in the local church, no matter what that is, that he could always find a sense of joy and a desire to know the person as a person and to help bring that person closer to the Lord, no matter where that person was at the moment. He treated them just as he would a father would his family.
The last count I knew, there were 202 men studying for the priesthood here. Probably one of the largest seminaries in the country, and I don't think it would be here now if it wasn't for Archbishop Flynn. You see somebody that really is living their faith. It's a real Christian. There isn't any question about it. Just even going to Mass with the Archbishop it's an experience.
Well, I've always felt that the priests that I've had the privilege to work with, the bishops that I've had the privilege to work with, do inspire me. I never expected to be called to the episcopacy. And so when I first got involved in here, I looked around to see what other bishops were doing, just to try to model myself after themselves. And Archbishop Flynn would certainly be one of the leaders that I would look to in that regard.
I remember being at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and there were about maybe 25 or 30 of us, and he was with the group. He said Mass every day. We said the Rosary on the bus. It was really a life-changing experience for me. He made it so special. 2 days later, all of us who were on the pilgrimage got a handwritten note from him saying how much he enjoyed being with us. You know, we were very touched.
Just the other day, I was at the barber shop, and the barber who cuts so many priests' hair said the Archbishop had just been in, and someone had walked in, realized Archbishop Flynn was sitting there, and had a little grievance with his local pastor and started launching into it that he hadn't been able to get a date yet from his local pastor to baptize his new baby. And Archbishop Flynn, rather than getting defensive or anything, simply said, "Well, you know what? I'd be happy to do that baptism myself. Here's my number. Call me. Let's set it up."
But I think of humor as being really in touch with yourself and not overly serious about your role. And I think he comes off as a man with a great sense of humor, a sense of himself, a sense of life as a comedy in a sense.
He's a very careful driver. And so whenever we would go anywhere and I would be driving, about every 30 seconds or so the Archbishop would be asking, "What's the speed limit here? And how fast are you going? And did you see that car up there? Now watch out." He would remind me, "Now remember, you're carrying precious cargo here. Be careful."
New Ulm's Pastoral Center sits on a piece of property that had not been fully developed. Towards the end of his life, Bishop Lucker decided to sell off this property and to develop it into a suburban area. Well, when Archbishop Flynn came down and saw this, he said, "You know, I'm sure that Bishop Schladweiler must have borrowed the money from the Archdiocese to buy those 2 farms." And I said, "Oh no, I don't think there's any record of that. You would never be able to find a record of that." He said, "Oh, I'm sure. I'm going to go back and I'm going to look," and that sort of thing. So he kept that up and kept it up and kept it up. So he brought it up the other night when I was with him. Now that I'm the Archbishop of St. Paul, Minneapolis, I said, "You're absolutely right. We should look into this, you know, because I think they owe us some money on that piece of property." So.
And when I first came to interview, if you will, or be interviewed before becoming the rector here, I was a guest at his home that evening. In the morning, Monsignor, he said, "I'll have, in case you're down ahead, I'll have coffee ready." And he told me how to get to the coffee and showed me and all this and where I could get my coffee. So I said, "It's my first time staying over at an Archbishop's house, and I have to make sure that I'm on time." So I thought, well, I'll get down early. Mass was 6:30. I came down about 5, thinking I'm in good time. I go into the chapel, and as I came around the corner, came into the chapel, there I saw Archbishop Flynn. He was making his holy hour already. He was deep in prayer, so I kind of quietly sat in the back. And at some certain point, I see the Archbishop getting up, and he goes out, and then I'm praying away, and he comes back in, and the next thing I hear him coming back in, and he reaches around me and hands me a mug of coffee. And he said, "You know, Monsignor," he said, "Jesus never minds if you have a little coffee when you're speaking with him."
Archbishop Flynn was a brand new bishop when he got a phone call, and the voice on the other end of the line simply said, "This is Mother Teresa." Archbishop Flynn thought that it was the local superior of a convent there in Lafayette, Louisiana, whose name was Mother Teresa. And he said, "Oh, I've been meaning to come and visit you. I just arrived. I'm still unpacking my bags. I promise I'm going to get there as soon as I can." And there was a pause, and this gentle voice said, "No, no, Bishop. This is Mother Teresa of Calcutta." And it began a very simple but genuine friendship.
A good leader's looking at you when he's talking to you. A not so good leader's looking past you when he's talking to you. And Archbishop Flynn was always looking at the person right in front of him, looking physically, looking spiritually, for the good of that person. Archbishop Flynn took each meeting, each Mass, each individual conversation with persons in his office. Each time he had to visit a parish, he took each thing one at a time. He wasn't worried about where he was going to next. When I was in Archbishop Flynn's presence, he was present to me, and I saw that with everyone else.
One of the great legacies of Archbishop Flynn is his hospitality. He is, without a doubt, one of the most welcoming and generous persons. He always puts people at ease when they're in his presence. He goes out of his way to extend himself in courtesy and in hospitality.
You know, when he travels, he always travels in the collar. And people really approach him. I mean, he doesn't get a minute's peace. And I asked him one time, why did he do that? And he said, "Well, that's my ministry." He said, that's what I do.
He always sat in the front, right behind the driver, and he'd always be the first one off the bus, and he'd stand there and help everybody off the bus. You know, and we'd say, well, gee, Archbishop, no, he just loved to do it. I mean, which was great.
I think he impacts people one by one by one. He's absolutely a friend to everybody with whom he comes in contact.
There's nothing more beautiful than seeing Archbishop Flynn dealing with the poor, or his passionate advocacy for recent immigrants or people suffering in any way.
I believe that he certainly personifies what it is to be a good and holy priest. Ardent, as we say in the prayer, ardent but gentle, servant of the gospel. Ardent in his love for the church, ardent in his desire that we prepare men to serve the church, and certainly ardent that you could bring people together to be one. He's a man of unity and communion. And that's been Archbishop Flynn's motto, if you will, even though it's not a written motto, is whatever the Lord wants of him and whatever the church asks of him, he gives it as his all.
I would find the young Harry Flynn pre-seminary and say, thank goodness you went into the priesthood.
Right.